Catholic Connection is a co-production of Ave Maria Radio and EWTN Radio and carried across the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network.
Welcome to Catholic Connection with Teresa Tomeo, keeping you connected to your faith and your world. Teresa tackles the issues of faith and culture, the pro-life message, and media awareness. And now, here's Teresa Tomeo.
And it is a Tuesday, the feast of the amazing St. Thomas Aquinas, one of our greatest theologians and philosophers ever in the entire history of the One Holy Catholic and Apostolic Church, showing that faith and reason are in harmony and not in opposition from God or with God, since both came from God, faith and reason indeed. So here's a cute story that Marcy, I call her Mango Marcy because she lives in Florida, but she does all my social media and my websites, and she's fabulous. And so this is actually posted. This is really cool, little fun fact about the saints. This is at my travelitalyexpert.com website. In 1273, while praying before a crucifix, it started glowing, and the Lord came alive and spoke to St. Thomas Aquinas. He went into ecstasy and levitated, his entire body floating from a deep prayer experience. All the brothers at the monastery came into the chapel where he was praying and saw him miraculously suspended in the air. And you know what? You can visit that chapel of the crucifix at the Basilica of San Domenico Maggiore, St. Dominic Major, in Naples, which is in the region of Campania, above the Amalfi Coast. So just an amazing saint, and gave us so much. And another town to visit, actually two towns real quickly. I can't stop ever talking about Italy because it's so amazing. You can go to the town of Viterbo, which is actually in the region of Lazio, not far from Rome. And there is a church there that actually has a pulpit that was built on the outside. When people came to hear Aquinas preach, they couldn't fit all the people inside the church, so they put this pulpit outside so he could talk to them, because there were so many people gathering in the town to hear the great insight from this amazing theologian and philosopher. And also Orvieto, which houses the Eucharistic miracle of Bolsena. He had a lot to do with the writings on the Eucharist, and there's images and frescoes on the wall in the chapel of the Eucharistic miracle there in Orvieto. Again, St. Thomas Aquinas, a great theologian, doctor, and philosopher. Pray for us. Okay, coming up in the program today, I'm so excited that I get to talk a little bit longer with Erica Steinmiller-Perdomo. She's with the Alliance Defending Freedom and a wonderful lawyer for the organization. And we're going to be talking about all the activity that's been happening. And Catholic News Agency has some excellent reports on this as well in the National Catholic Register regarding the executive orders of President Trump related to, so many things, the Mexico City policy, the Hyde Amendment, the World Health Organization, the releasing, the pardoning of the pro-life leaders who were jailed. There's a number of really positive steps that have been taken by this administration. But before we get to that, Erica has an amazing testimony. Now, if you're watching on the March for Life, you may have seen it or heard it. And I found this out right before we were set to go on the air. We started talking, and I asked her how many times she had been to the march. And then she told me an amazing story about her mom and a decision her mother made, and how the two of them approached the March for Life a few years ago and what it meant to them to be there together. So it's a great story. We'll share that and then talk a little bit more about what's happening across the country, of course, and the reaction to all the different flurry of activities and orders from the new administration regarding life. The National Weather Service, I forgot to mention, Father Michael Schmitz is joining us at the bottom of the hour. That's a big deal, right? He's amazing. The Catechism in a year, the Bible in a year, Bulldog Catholic is doing such great work. And he's joining us again for the Grand Getaway. Grand Hotel, of course, on Mackinac Island, on the Straits of Mackinac, in northern Lower Michigan. It's a beautiful weekend in August, and we'll tell you also about a special discount that's available. But Father Mike will be celebrating Mass for us. He'll be giving a beautiful talk, and it'll be just a great opportunity to meet like-minded folks and maybe even extend your vacation in northern Lower Michigan, which is a big hot spot for summer vacations, especially on what we call the Gold Coast. So if you hold up your left hand, right in the middle of your hand, just above your hand would be Mackinac Island, and on the one side would be like Huron, the other side would be like Michigan. You've got the Straits of Mackinac where the island is located. And so you can go straight up to Mackinac City, hop on the ferry, stay at the Grand, maybe stay there a few days longer exploring the island, or head to one of the many beautiful coastal towns in Michigan for an extended summer break. We'll talk about that with Father Michael Schmitz and what he'll be addressing at the beautiful Grand Hotel Getaway. We'll also be doing Catholic Connection Live from the hotel again, God willing. That's coming up in early August. Again, it is a Tuesday morning. Quickly, we'll report on the weather. We have the threat of heavy snow and some gusty winds or portions of the Great Lakes in the northern mid-Atlantic and New England. That's through tomorrow. And there's potential for snow squalls that may produce dangerous travel. A storm system expected to produce severe storms over the southern plains through tomorrow and Thursday, and heavy rain could also produce some flash and river flooding in certain parts of the nation. Right now, 5 minutes past the hour already. A ton of news to get through, so let's get started right now on a Tuesday morning edition of Catholic Connection. And, of course, you're listening to EWTN. We'll talk more about this story that is featured in Catholic News Agency today. We'll discuss this with the Alliance Defending Freedom after the break. President Donald Trump's Department of Justice ending the weaponization of a federal law that he says led to the imprisonment of pro-life activists. This according to a recent Department of Justice directive released on Friday. The DOJ limiting now its enforcement of the Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrance Act, or FACE Act, except the DOJ says in extraordinary circumstances such as cases involving death, injury, or serious property damage. That again is according to a January 24th memorandum by the Chief of Staff to the Attorney General. And as CNA goes on to tell us, while the FACE Act protects both abortion clinics and life-affirming pregnancy resource centers, the measure under the previous administration was used to prosecute a disproportionate number of pro-life activists for non-violent offenses. The memo going out on Friday as thousands, tens of thousands actually, of pro-lifers gathered in Washington for the annual March for Life. On Thursday, the new president issuing pardons for 23 pro-life activists imprisoned under the measure, including several elderly people and a young mother. Meanwhile, Lisa Taylor tells us House Speaker Mike Johnson says he feels like the U.S. is entering a new era of government.
The Louisiana congressman spoke ahead of President Trump meeting with House GOP members in Doral, Florida.
When the president says he wants to make the government more efficient and effective, and we say we want to limit the size and scope of government, it means that everything is on the table for reevaluation.
He added that he expects the U.S. to handle negotiations with countries on deportation flights the same way it did with Colombia over the weekend. It comes as House Republican leaders have signaled they will attempt to put Trump's legislative agenda into one bill that would include measures on energy and the border.
There are reports that a number of Mexican cartels fired at Border Patrol agents as illegal immigrants tried to cross the Rio Grande River. According to law enforcement sources, agents came under fire Monday as the group guided the migrant toward the U.S. The Border Patrol agents returned fire and the migrants returned to the Mexican side. No reports of injuries to anyone involved. The Trump administration showcasing, it says, what it calls the worst criminals taken into custody as part of immigration raids. The White House X thread reads that under President Trump's leadership, ICE agents are working to protect our communities. ICE reported more than 950 arrested nationwide just yesterday alone. And Scott Pringle tells us on the East Coast, residents in the Bronx and officials there are not happy about a migrant shelter set to open soon in their area.
Well, Bronx residents turned out to a community board meeting Monday night to complain about the shelter set to open by the end of February. This will be at a warehouse on Bruckner Boulevard in Mott Haven, and it'll have the capacity to hold up to 2,200 migrant men.
I am concerned for the community at large, the schools, the churches, the seniors. I mean, we have to lock ourselves up by 4 o'clock. It's not fair that we get this shelter.
Bronx Borough President Vanessa Gibson expressed her displeasure that residents were left in the dark about this plan until after it was finalized.
Nearly 30 people suspected of trying to cross the border through the ocean into San Diego had to be rescued this weekend. San Diego State Senator Brian Jones says it shows a need for greater security.
I think it's about time that the federal government has done its job in securing the border. What the previous administration was doing on the border was not compassionate, allowing people to come over and be trafficked, put in harm's way. We saw the boat capsizing. That's not compassionate to allow people to come in that way.
Lifeguards rescuing the victims near Ocean Beach, California. The Coast Guard there is saying there have been more than a dozen smuggling attempts near San Diego in just the last 2 weeks. And survivors and family members in other news are continuing to commemorate the 80th anniversary of the liberation of the Auschwitz-Birkenau concentration camp in Poland.
I stood and watched helplessly as little girls from the nearby barrack were marched away crying and shivering to the gas chamber.
That's survivor Tova Friedman speaking at yesterday's ceremony. Auschwitz and Birkenau, the site of unimaginable Nazi atrocities, a murder of 1 million Jews during the Holocaust and 100,000 other victims. 50 survivors were among those who attended the ceremony 10 years ago. 300 survivors were in attendance. Vice President J.D. Vance says federal money to help hurricane recovery efforts in Southwest Virginia will be arriving, and soon. Vance joining Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin in Damascus yesterday, talking with local leaders about their needs 4 months after flooding caused extensive damage in the area. And the death toll from the devastating wildfires across Los Angeles now stands at 29. Another death reported by the L.A. County Medical Examiner's Office yesterday, the result of the Palisades fire. The fire erupting January 7th, destroying more than 23,000 acres and thousands of structures. And Daniel Martindale tells us satellite images of an undeveloped lot in Lincoln Heights, California, near Los Angeles, are going viral.
The word help is spelled out in large letters about a dozen times. LAPD, FBI, and the Spanish words for trafficking, federal, and terrorism can also be seen. The LAPD says it responded to a call about unknown trouble in the area on Sunday morning and did not find anything nefarious going on. The LAPD also says the satellite images were taken in 2023, but a news helicopter flew over the area on Monday afternoon and found the words are still there. The land is owned by the Union Pacific Railroad. Union Pacific says a man has been trespassing on the company's property and other commercial lots to create misleading messages.
A tuberculosis outbreak in Kansas City area, now the largest documented outbreak in U.S. history. This according to state officials. There are currently nearly 70 people being treated for TB on the Kansas side of Kansas City, and nearly 80 latent cases have also been confirmed. Perry Williams tells us former Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot is unveiling her findings of an investigation into the spending of South Suburban Dalton Mayor Tiffany Haynard.
Lightfoot discussed the results of her more than 9-month-long probe last night in a room packed with residents.
There was a concerted, systematic effort on behalf of Mayor Haynard and others in her administration to hide the true financial condition of the village of Dalton from the trustees and from members of the public.
The investigation uncovered extremely high levels of spending in 2023 on village credit cards, including more than $43,000 in Amazon purchases in a single day.
The opening bell ringing this morning following a day that saw a massive tech sell-off resulting in a mostly lower close on Wall Street. Investors today will be keeping a close eye out for a handful of big-name earnings reports, including from Boeing, Starbucks, General Motors, JetBlue, and Lockheed Martin. A New York State trooper is forced to resign, facing criminal charges now for staging his own shooting. Thomas Masia turning himself into police yesterday after falsely claiming he had been shot in the leg last year by a stranded driver on the Southern State Parkway, and that set off a multi-state manhunt.
The shooter that we were all looking for only existed in Masia's head.
That's Nassau County District Attorney Ann Donnelly telling reporters of 5-year veteran shooting himself with a .22 caliber rifle to get sympathy and attention, she says. Also saying he failed his oath as an officer. The 27-year-old former trooper is pleading not guilty to false reporting a crime, tampering with evidence, and official misconduct. He is being held without bail. And CNN anchor Jim Acosta is reportedly leaving the network after he was officially pulled from its programming schedule. Fox News reporting yesterday Acosta was expected to leave CNN after it announced last week that his 10 a.m. ET program, Eastern Time program, was being replaced with the Situation Room with Wolf Blitzer and Pamela Brown in the network's latest reshuffling and layoffs, which included a round of 200 layoffs last week. Acosta became more widely known as CNN's chief White House correspondent for his antagonistic relationship with President Donald Trump and his aides during the first term of Donald Trump. Now, after the 2020 election, his status at CNN was shifted to chief domestic correspondent, anchoring a show on the weekends, but eventually moving his way to weekday programming. While CNN's past leadership encouraged his constant sparring matches with the first administration of Donald Trump, the network's current leadership appears, at least, to be trying to appear more neutral for the second go-around. And Brian Schick tells us if you're thinking about a place to retire, you might want to look to the Sunshine State of Florida.
That's according to a new study by Wallet Hub. The Sunshine State was ranked number 1 for retirement nationwide due to its low taxes for retirees and the funding it receives for seniors from the Older Americans Act, which funds transportation and nutrition programs for older residents. Some of the other best states to retire include Minnesota, Colorado, and Wyoming, while Kentucky was named the worst.
It is a Tuesday morning. Thanks for tuning in to Catholic Connection here on the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network. Up next, this is your pro-life radio network and network in general, right, for all things life and all things Catholic. And we'll be joined by Erica Steinmiller-Perdomo, legal counsel with Alliance Defending Freedom, taking a look at the many activities pro-life related that are happening, new activities coming from the new administration. We'll be right back.
People ask how they can care for older family members who can't fully care for themselves. One answer is Visiting Angels, America's choice in senior home care. Visiting Angels assists adults nationwide with 600 locations to continue living at home and not have to move into a nursing home. Their caregivers provide assistance in hygiene, meals, and light housework. Services are provided up to 24 hours per day, and you can select your caregiver before service begins. More information, including franchise opportunities, is on the web at visitingangels.com.
The wisdom of Mother Angelica.
I went to Las Vegas years and years ago for one of these cable shows, and I was shocked to see all these old ladies in their 70s and 80s getting off that plane, running for a slot machine. You don't have a chance to win. They're all fixed. I know, my uncle used to have slot machines.
EWTN. Live truth. Live Catholic.
Italy aficionado Teresa Tamio's newest book is coming soon to the Ave Maria online store. In Italy's Shrines and Wonders, Teresa Tamio provides how best to navigate the most popular sites, best routes, and how to best soak in all the beauty Italy has to offer. She also shares the most inspiring journeys to make your Italy excursion utterly unforgettable. Shrines and Wonders from Catholic Connections, Teresa Tamio will be found soon at AveMariaRadio.net.
Steve Ray here. Next year's a Jubilee year, and we're going to celebrate it in Rome. But not only Rome. This is our Saints and Shrines of Italy pilgrimage, and joining us is our good friend Teresa Tamio.
Yes, Steve, fantastical. Walking through the holy doors, immersing ourselves in the deeply Catholic culture of Italy. I'll be joining you and Janet in Florence and Assisi.
Join us this May for the Jubilee year from Milan to Florence and much more, all the way to Rome.
Find the Ave Maria Radio travel tab at AveMariaRadio.net.
One of the wonderful aspects of covering the incredible pro-life march each year for EWTN is to meet amazing people like Erica Steinmiller-Perdomo. Of course, she's a brilliant attorney with the Alliance Defending Freedom, and we're going to talk about some of the recent pro-life activities coming out of the White House and the Trump administration. But she shared with me on the air on Friday a beautiful pro-life story relating to her mom. And Erica, it's great to talk to you again. I'm glad we have a little bit more time. I know we only have short spurts, 5 minutes or so when we're at the March for Life. It was fabulous, but I'm glad you're with us for a good 10 more minutes. So let's talk a little bit. First of all, share with our listeners briefly the story of life, you and your mom, and why the pro-life movement and the March for Life is so important. Good to talk to you again.
Yes, thank you so much, Teresa. It's wonderful to be on with you today. And like I shared with your viewers on Friday, I'm here and I do pro-life work because my mom chose life with me. And when she was pregnant with me, she received a diagnosis that I had polycystic kidney disease and that I would not have functioning kidneys, that I would either die in her womb or live a few weeks on dialysis and be a very sickly child. And so she was encouraged by many doctors to have an abortion, but she knew that she couldn't do it. So she chose to have me, and during those months, she received a lot of healing prayer, and I was miraculously healed in her womb. And when I was born, my kidneys were functioning perfectly on their own, and the doctors told her they had no medical explanation.
Mm-hmm. Well, as I said on Friday, we have an explanation. It's called God, right?
Yes, that's right. Amen.
All right. So you were telling me during the break that someone reached out to you after our interview on Friday?
That's true. A nurse in Florida who works with families with a lethal diagnosis from the time of that they're in utero until natural death. And so she started a program to give care to those families. And I thought that was, so amazing that she, reached out to me, and I'm hoping to connect with her and see how we can support that amazing work, because there's really medical professionals there that want to do the life-saving work and that want to accompany families who receive a lethal diagnosis.
Wow. What a great testimony. Not only your testimony, but the positive fallout of it. Okay, Erica, lots to discuss. I mean, it's hard to keep up with what's going on with all these different statements and decisions coming out of the White House regarding pro-life. Of course, we received the news from the video statement from Donald Trump at the march about the pro-life leaders, the sidewalk counselors who were jailed, and they were pardoned. Of course, there's other issues, including, let's talk about the importance of reinstating, first of all, the Mexico City policy. What does that mean?
Yes, so we're first of all so pleased to see Trump take really decisive action in the first week that shows that he is with the pro-life movement. And so one of those is reinstating the Mexico City policy, which prevents U.S. taxpayer dollars from going to fund organizations and programs that promote and pay for abortions abroad. So that's us sending our taxpayer dollars overseas or to other countries to pay for abortions, and Trump put an end to that.
What about the Hyde Amendment? There's news in that area as well.
Yeah, so the Hyde Amendment is basically a budget line that is passed by Congress every year that prevents taxpayer dollars from paying for abortions, because the reality is majorities of Americans do not want their taxpayer dollars to pay for abortions, whether they agree on the moral issue or not. They don't want their taxpayer dollars paying for abortions or abortion facilities. And so the Hyde Amendment has been enforced by most Republican presidents, and in Trump's first term, he enforced the Hyde Amendment. And now after about 4 years of the Biden administration pushing abortion on the American people in any way that they can, we know that the Biden administration tried to get around the Hyde Amendment and actually pay for military service members and their families to travel to get abortions. Mm-hmm. And so we're hoping that to stop that taxpayer funding of abortion, and happy to see Trump reinstate Hyde. And really, we have a case right now that's before the U.S. Supreme Court that is about the authority of states to be able to defund Planned Parenthood, because Planned Parenthood and abortion providers shouldn't receive a dime of our taxpayer money.
Yeah, absolutely. Talking with Erica Steinmiller-Perdomo, legal counsel with Alliance Defending Freedom, about the many activities coming out of the Trump administration regarding the pro-life movement. There's a big story. I led the news with this morning, Erica, regarding the Department of Justice and the FACE Act. And let me just read you the first two paragraphs. President Donald Trump's Department of Justice will end the weaponization of a federal law that led to the imprisonment of pro-life activists. This according to a recent DOJ directive released on Friday, of course, a day we were all gathered in Washington for the March for Life. The DOJ limited its enforcement of the Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances Act, or FACE Act, except in extraordinary circumstances such as cases involving death, injury, or serious property damage. This, again, according to the January 24th memorandum. Weren't some pro-lifers hoping that he would wipe out the FACE Act altogether? And what's your reaction to this action from the Department of Justice?
Well, we applaud President Trump for pardoning the peaceful pro-life advocates that were unjustly prosecuted under the FACE Act. 92% of all Biden-Harris FACE Act cases were brought against pro-life advocates. And that is despite almost 400 cases of pro-abortion activists violently attacking and firebombing and vandalizing pro-life pregnancy resource centers and churches. And the FACE Act should be repealed because it's been weaponized to target pro-life activity while leaving pregnancy centers and churches largely unprotected.
Say in this statement from the DOJ, until further notice, no new abortion-related FACE Act actions, criminal or civil, will be permitted without authorization from the Assistant Attorney General. But could we see a removal of this measure altogether or wiping this out? Because eventually, depending on what happens in the future, someone could weaponize it again.
Yes, and there have been efforts. There was a bill introduced in Congress just this last week that would repeal the FACE Act because it has been weaponized. It's been used to discriminate against and target pro-life activists, and has not been used to fulfill the purpose of the act was to protect entrances to health clinics, and it's not been used even-handedly in that way.
So what do you think? Do you think it's a possibility that your people and other groups, other religious freedom organizations such as yours, can sit down at the table with this administration and discuss this further? Is that in the planning at all?
Well, I think Congress is taking action on it. President Trump has expressed his sentiments on it, and so we're hopeful to see this act repealed.
Erica, thank you, and thanks again for sharing that beautiful story about your mom and her courage. And look at what that courage has given us, an amazing pro-life legal attorney who's doing such good and making such a difference in the world. Thanks, Erica. Great to catch up with you again. Keep up the wonderful work. Erica Steinmiller-Perdomo is legal counsel with the wonderful religious freedom organization Alliance Defending Freedom. We'll be right back. Father Michael Schmitz up next. Stay tuned.
"60 on 10 with Monsignor Charles Pope.
The sixth commandment, you shall not commit adultery. This commandment is wide-ranging in its implications. It forbids us not only from committing the very act of adultery, but also other sexual sins such as fornication or premarital sex, watching pornography, and speaking lewdly. Likewise, homosexual acts and acts of masturbation are also forbidden us. And the Lord himself even enjoins us to a purity of mind, that we should not freely entertain lustful thoughts. And so it's wide-ranging, it's challenging, but it's in service of the great sacredness of human life, which comes from sexual activity. So we thank God for this great gift of sexuality, and we ask for his grace to live it with great reverence. The sixth commandment, you shall not commit adultery.
For more about the 10 Commandments, visit EWTNRC.com.
What does the Catholic Catechism teach concerning the natural human curiosity and desire to know the future? Paragraph 2115 counsels us that a sound Christian attitude consists in putting oneself confidently in the hands of Providence for whatever concerns the future, and giving up all unhealthy curiosity about it. What does the Catechism condemn as unhealthy curiosity? All forms of divination, deifying objects as persons, are to be rejected, as are consulting horoscopes, astrology, palm readings, interpretations of omens and lots, clairvoyance, and mediums. All these venues conceal a desire for power over time, history, and other human beings, powers that belong to God alone. This is Peggy Stanton, and this has been the Order of Malta's Minute with the Catechism.
Always a joy to chat with the amazing Father Michael Schmitz. Of course, Bulldog Catholics does such great work with college students at his own college there. Well, it's not his college, but where he works in Duluth, Minnesota. And he also, of course, has been incredible in evangelizing the faith through the Bible in the Year podcast, a Catechism of the Year, and his homilies every week. And you can follow him on YouTube. And we're just so proud of the great work he's doing. Father, great to talk to you again. So here we are. Boy, I know that you being in Minnesota and being in Michigan, the idea of the Grand Getaway in early August sounds so appealing, does it not? Good morning.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. I mean, it is kind of a temperate day today here in northern Minnesota, but oh man, I can't wait. I think, well, I know that the very first time I ever went to Mackinac was on the Grand Getaway. It was incredible.
Really?
Yeah. That might have been
because you're not that far. Yeah, you're not that far from Michigan, and of course the Great Lakes are something very familiar to you also because you've got Lake Superior right there in your area. But what was your impression the first time you went to Mackinac, the Grand Hotel, Father?
Oh wow! Well, it just so I grew up in kind of vacation land, Minnesota, and so there's a lot of similarities when it comes to northern Michigan, northern Minnesota. I'm just like, oh, I really feel at home here. But it was completely unique. Yeah, very, very different than anything I experienced before because you have this island. I take a ferry out to the island, and on the island, I think there's just bikes and horses as far as transportation is concerned. And so that was fascinating. And then obviously the Grand Hotel is historic and iconic. And the event itself, the Grand Getaway, was just this really cool combination. I think that corporate travel does this really well. This cool, really great combination of a somewhat retreat and just vacation. And they strike that balance so well.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that's what's so important. And many people have done this annually now for years, and this is something they just put on their calendar and they go back. And by the way, if folks are interested, they can go to, it's on my website at teresatomeo.com under the events section. You can also go to the corporate travel website at ctscentral.net. But Father, I understand we're close to selling out. Is that correct?
That's what I hear. That's what I hear. I was like, we're going to go on the show. We're going to talk a little bit about the Grand Getaway, and yet space is pretty limited these days, which is great because I mean, I think one of the things it shows is that the event itself is phenomenal and the location is just ideal. But there is actually, I believe that corporate travel has, even though they're still selling out, there is $100 discount off if people book the Grand Getaway before February 15th, before Valentine's, or just after Valentine's Day.
Right. Well, you know what? This would be a very nice Valentine's Day gift, right? If someone would purchase that and say, "Honey,"
I think it would be.
Yeah,
I think it'd be adorable, it'd be sweet.
Yeah, hon, we're going to Mackinac, not Mackinac, but Mackinac. Just make sure they
not Mackinac.
pronounce it correctly. Again, we're talking with Father Michael Schmitz, Bulldog Catholic, Catechism in a Year, Bible in a Year. As Father said, and he knows me, and never met a sale I didn't like, there's $100 off a discount for those who book by Friday, February 15th for the Grand Hotel Getaway, or the Grand Getaway as we call it. Father, you do a lot of retreats. You work with young people, but you do all kinds of different events, and we're so grateful for your ministry. You do the Good News Cruise with us as well. You lead pilgrimages. How important is it for families or couples? I mean, this is open for anyone. Singles can come. Anyone can come to the Grand Hotel Getaway. How important is it to take advantage of something like this?
Well, you know, I think it's fascinating because when I first got to campus here, this is my 20th year. And when I first got here, it was kind of like, essentially, it was pretty small ministry. And we didn't have any staff other than myself, more or less. I mean, there's some people who, yes, I mean, they helped out a lot, but the staff was very small. And so I knew, okay, what we can do is really limited. And so I said, okay, what we need to do is three things. We need to have sacraments as available as possible. So we have Mass every day, confession every day. We needed to have small groups or like Bible studies because, as you probably heard before, you know, as Catholics, we worship in rows, but we grow in circles. So we just need to have small groups. We need to have opportunity for community on a campus where there's thousands and thousands of people. And so where can you have that community where you can grow, you know, iron sharpening iron. But then the third thing I was so convicted by was we need to have excellent retreats because there's something about a retreat where you stop kind of ordinary life. You take, but it doesn't even have to be take a break in the sense of it is inactivity, but there's something about stepping out of, well, here's just the rhythm. I get up and do this every day, go back to sleep. And I get up and do this every day, go back to sleep. There's something about getting out of that rhythm and going away specifically, not just as a break, not just as a time to rest, but specifically as an opportunity to let God speak. And there's something about that just is absolutely essential for us. So as priests, we have canonically, like church law says, we have to take at least one retreat every year. And
thinking about this morning, so do deacons. Deacons the same thing. Yeah, Dominic has to take a retreat every year. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like the church has said that this is so important for your spiritual health that you have to do it. And if you don't do it, I don't know what the penalty is, but I know that it's against the church law. But there's that sense of, isn't that true for everybody? I mean, every one of us as disciples of Jesus, we are called to pour out, obviously, but it also means we need to allow God to fill us. And so I think that this is an incredible opportunity because this is a chance where you don't actually have to, you know, leave. You could, you know, couples could just go and say, get a babysitter for the time of the Grand Getaway. But you also could go as an entire family and still enter into retreat. And I think there's something so powerful about that.
The other thing, too, Father, and I was thinking about this in terms of, we know that World Marriage Day is coming up February 9th, I believe, and February 16th we're having our World Marriage Day dinner in the Archdiocese of Detroit, which is usually very large, and people, of course, typical Catholics, we always wait till the last minute to register. And so I was talking about it this morning, and something that Deacon Dom and I say when we give our testimony is you have the priesthood and the religious life, the diaconate, or the sisterhood, religious sisters, the holy orders. There's sacraments of service, but so is marriage. And if you're required as a priest or a deacon to go to a retreat, I think that should be when you're signing that marriage certificate. I don't know if they could do that, but I'm not a canon lawyer. But that should be required for married couples too.
Well, at least recommended. It's not required, right? Because, and also, I think one of the things that keeps people back from doing that. Well, A, busyness, obviously. But secondly, where do I go? Like, what are my resources? Like, I think that I know for many people, I would love to be able to go on retreat. And the two obstacles are, A, I'm so busy, or I don't know where to go. Where could I go that would be life-giving, that would actually nourish my soul, that would help me take that next step in my relationship with the Lord. And so I can't do much about the busyness part. But I think definitely the Grand Getaway would be an opportunity to take care of the where do I go part.
Right, absolutely. Well, let me give folks the dates. It's August 3rd to the 5th, which is a beautiful time of year up on Mackinac because it can be a little bit cool up there. Sometimes it doesn't warm up until, really warm up for summer temps until the middle of July. So August is perfect. So in addition to the amazing Father Michael Schmitz, you also have Father Leo Padalinghug, Dr. Edward Shree, and Steve Ray, all of whom will be there speaking. What an incredible weekend, or actually it's during the week, look at a little cheaper price for the hotel. So August 3rd through 5th, the Grand Hotel Getaway. We've been doing this annually. Gosh, I've lost track of how many years. It's on beautiful Mackinac Island in the Great Lakes state of Michigan, and more with one of our speakers. And, of course, he'll be leading us in Mass along with Father Leo, the amazing Father Michael Schmitz. We'll talk more about faith and life and retreats and all kinds of good stuff with the good Padre right after the break. Stay tuned.
Christ is the answer with Father John Riccardo.
I tell oftentimes an experience that I had at Divine Child when I was a young priest, 1 year ordained. First time I ever really saw the power of the Blessed Sacrament. And we simply exposed the Blessed Sacrament at the end of Mass one night. I encouraged people. I said, you know what, we've been in the habit of praying over people after Mass. I said, we're not going to do that this week. I'm just going to invite people to come on up and pray if they want to pray. And I put the Blessed Sacrament on the altar. I kneel down. As I kneel down, the church is in the sanctuary, the whole church. And as I'm looking at this, and I'm looking at the people there, and I'm looking at Jesus under the appearance of bread there, I saw the Lord standing on the altar. And he's just standing there looking out at all the people. And then at a certain point, he turned towards me, and he just bowed. And he says, don't you see how easy this is? You don't have to do anything. You just have to put me out. You put me out, and I will work.
It's time for Family Man with Dr. Gregory Popcak.
You've probably heard Venerable Father Patrick Peyton say, the family that prays together stays together. Well, as the director of the Peyton Institute, I like to add that the family that plays together also prays together. Family play rituals, like family days, game nights, and other similar activities, aren't just fun things to do. They're ways Catholic families remind each other to celebrate the life God has given them. Daily play rituals remind families that both in good times and in hard times, God always wants us to look for reasons to rejoice. That's one reason family rituals for playing together are such an important part of Catholic family life. To discover more ways your family can celebrate the liturgy of domestic church life, check out the newest editions of Parenting with Grace and visit CatholicCounselors.com. I'm Dr. Greg Popcak, but you can call me Family Man.
To discover more ways faith can enrich your life, visit CatholicCounselors.com.
Talking with the amazing Father Michael Schmitz, a great evangelist, a wonderful priest, dedicated to so many areas of the faith, especially working with our young people. He's a regular speaker at many of our events. We just saw each other on the Good News Cruise, which was a lot of fun to have him on Catholic Connection. We'll be doing Catholic Connection live again from the Grand Hotel Getaway. It is put on by Corporate Travel, ctscentral.net. And in addition, as I mentioned before the break, to the amazing Father Michael Schmitz, Steve Ray, of course, our good friend here at EWTN, Dr. Edward Shree, who is incredible, and we also have another well-known EWTN face and voice, Father Leo Padalinghung. Father Mike, I don't know if Father Leo was going to cook, but that would be kind of fun if he does like a cooking demonstration.
That would be great. That would be great. He has, I think he has a food truck or some kind of thing out in.
Yes.
Is it Baltimore or somewhere out there?
Baltimore. Mm-hmm.
He has multiple times said, "Hey, come out. I want to feed you," and I'm like, I appreciate that. Because he's great. He's awesome. But also, I'm like, that's a long trip to Baltimore just to get some food. I mean, I'm sure your food is good. I know your food is good. And your company is great. But
so here's the deal. Maybe he could put the truck on a horse-drawn carriage because you can't bring cars on the island. So maybe he could do it on a horse.
I think it'd be a food carriage. And that's
there you go. Wouldn't that be fun? Okay, so just a reminder before we continue the conversation, Father, that we have a $100 discount if you register by February 15th. And again, you can go to ctscentral.net, the Grand Getaway on Mackinac Island, August 3rd to the 5th. And, Father, there seems to be a different, I don't know what it is. I kind of felt it at the March for Life, although, as you know, that's always a very upbeat, positive event. But people seem to be breathing somewhat a sigh of relief. And I don't want to get to the whole politics thing, but I think people are feeling they can speak more freely now than they could compared to previous times. What are you seeing out there in terms of how people are reacting to what's going on?
Well, I think it's a good observation. One of the things that I don't know if this is accurate or if this is just me, my impression, is that for a long time, it seems like for a long time that if someone were just to say to make an accusation about you or say a name, call you some kind of name, whether that be that you're sexist or racist or any kind of phobic, just because you might have let's stop and ask the question about a certain policy. Now, obviously, there are people who are racist, people who are sexist, etc. But I think the conversation was kind of shut down for a couple of years there. I think where maybe temperature was really high, or even not temperature really high. It seems to me that people were just kind of intimidated into silence. As has been referred to, I've heard recently in the last year or so, as kind of like a silent majority of just people who just, I want to be reasonable, I want to be charitable, but I don't know if I can speak up because it seems like if I were to say, well, I believe there's two genders, that kind of thing, then I would just be kind of labeled or I would be kind of shut down. And I think, again, there is plenty of room for argument, plenty of room for debate, plenty of room for discussion, but it almost seems like for a while there was no room for debate or discussion. It was just either get on the train or you're evil. And I think what I get the sense, at least, is that hopefully there is an acknowledgement of, okay, we can disagree on some things, policy, and still be united in principle. And that's one of the things that I keep coming back to is that even whether it's politics or culture, that when we have a culture that's united on principle, like say, for example, the principle that all human beings are made in God's image and therefore have an inviolable dignity, like that principle. I mean, and when we're on that same page, then we can discuss policy. We can disagree with policy. We can disagree with how to move forward with these things, but because we have that foundation that's in common. But I think it's when there's and even if we disagree on principles, we can disagree on principles because that's part of what it is to pursue the truth. But I think that when we can't talk about the policies or can't even discuss what are the merits or the demerits of certain principles, then we've lost something. And I think there was a time when we really lost something because it seems like there was just a lot of yelling and name-calling. And maybe right now we can actually make some progress. Wow, what do you think?
I totally agree, and I'm really hopeful. And I think we always have to take the high road. I think it's a great opportunity, as you and I were discussing during the break, for continued education, because there are a lot of people who may not support a particular candidate, one side of the political aisle or the other, but are realizing that, oh my goodness, things have gotten really, really out of hand in terms of extreme measures on abortion, the transgender ideology, and so many issues that were really forced upon us in addition to being silenced. So we have to take the high road and not just say, nah, our candidate or candidates won or whatever that may be, or our policies won. But why are these policies important? And what does it mean to us, not just as Catholics, but as dignified human beings, all of us made in the image and likeness of God? I see this as a huge opportunity for us to continue to educate, but to meet people where they're at, because a lot of people may not agree with us, again, politically, but they voted a certain way because they realized that things weren't going well for them for a variety of reasons. So how can we show them all of these things that are happening right now, especially the positive things that are happening with the pro-life movement? I just interviewed a wonderful lawyer from the Alliance Defending Freedom about all these different actions that are coming out of this administration. Why aren't these things good? Not from a political perspective, Father, but from a dignified perspective as human beings.
Well, yeah, and I think that there's also, when I've spoken to people that I know there's some people who were very relieved at the outcome of this past election, and some people who were very troubled at the outcome of this past election. And in talking with some of those people who were troubled, there was one of the things that really struck me was there was a genuine sense of fear. There was a genuine sense of what is going to happen to my own personal freedoms, what's going to happen to the freedoms of people I love and care about. And I remember actually even someone very close to me who said, if this happens, if something along the lines of even stripping of freedoms happens, I mean legitimate freedoms, not any kind of imposed or imagined freedoms, but real freedoms, what would you do? And I said, well, I think I stand on principle, and I think the principle is that all human beings are created equal, endowed by the Creator with certain inalienable rights. And I would fight or argue on behalf of freedom. I would fight and argue on behalf of liberty and dignity of you. And there's a certain aspect where I hope that I'm troubled by the fact that there are some people who are very afraid. But at the same time, I want to re-emphasize or reiterate that if a person were to experience this kind of what's going to happen next, what if this happened? Well, then my posture is that all those who belong to Jesus, at least, would say, then we stand against any kind of injustice. If a policy that was there that was unjust, we stand against injustice. If there's something that was against dignity of the human person, then we'd stand up for the human dignity of the human person. And I think that there's a great opportunity we have to demonstrate that if anything were to happen, we could be advocates on behalf of our Lord and advocates on behalf of anyone who found themselves in that position.
That's so true. It's a beautiful insight. And this is one of the reasons, Father, I love being Catholic so much, because the Catholic Church is all about balance. And if you look at prudential judgments, right, there are certain things about which we can disagree. And you mentioned that earlier. We can disagree. We know we have to serve the poor. We know that we have to help the migrant. But these are issues that are prudential, and we can discuss, and hopefully civilly, with the person's best interests in mind, how we are to approach that as a Catholic. Now, there are certain things that are non-negotiable, such as the issue of abortion and birth control and the issue of marriage. It's between a man and a woman. There's no exception to that. But we can also, at the same time, explain to people why the Church is right in these things. And to me, I always like to point to just what's happening in the news. Like if you look at, I mentioned this yesterday in one of my editorial segments, just looking at the high number of sexually transmitted infections every year from the CDC. Every single year, the CDC says we're at epidemic proportions. They always put this news story out. And what do they say? We need more birth control. Well, gee, how's that been working for us the last 25 years? What does the Church say about this? Okay, the Church says that we are not meant to jump from bed to bed to bed. There is a reason that the sexual act is supposed to be within marriage between a man or a woman. So if you draw from real life, getting people to think about this when they realize there are these huge problems out there, maybe the Church isn't this old, place full of fuddy-duddies who just want to squash our fun. Maybe she actually has something to teach us over 2,000 years. I mean, when I started studying the Church teaching, I was like, where have I been all these years? I could have had a V8. I mean, I felt like I was so stupid. But it's so beautiful. People will just take the time, take a breath, and sit down and talk to people, listen to them, and say, okay, well, did you know this is why the Church teaches this? And maybe share something with them that they could read. What do you think?
And no, I completely agree. Going back to that notion of if we have solid principles, then we have so much room to disagree on policy, or as you said, prudential decisions. It's that sense of being able to say, of course, like we have. I mean, was it Dorothy Day who had said, "You love God only as much as you love the person you love least." Like that sense of like, okay, in that case, we need to put our faith into practice, and again, caring for the poor, the refugee, the migrant, the abandoned, the orphans and widows, like absolutely. And in the service of that, we get to actually figure out what is the wisest way, what's the best way, what's actually the most charitable way to help someone. As you know, if someone was begging for drugs or begging for money for alcohol, the most loving thing wouldn't be to give them what they want. The most loving thing would be to give them what they need. And so similarly, we have to figure out, okay, what is that? How can we, and not just as a culture, not just as a church or as a country, but how can I as an individual actually love? Because I just think, man, in so many ways, we look to others to take care of people next to us. And here's a person, they're down and out. Who's going to come in and help? And the church continues to say, well, in the principle of subsidiarity, which is, well, if you can, then you should. Or if the few of us can, then the few of us should. And that's something about that is very, well, I remember hearing this years ago, because I don't know, Tolstoy or someone, but you can't love people in the abstract. Like you can't love humanity. You can only love individuals. And because of it, or else I just have an affection for the idea of humanity. But to truly love, that means it's got to be personal, it's got to be relational, and that means I have to be the one who's loving. I have to be the one who is being Jesus. And so again, yes, of course we need policy, and we need governments, and we need culture, and we have all those things. But at the heart of it is, okay, Jesus, how are you calling me to love the people closest to me? I have a friend, his name's Annie Hickman, and he's always said this. He said that when Jesus said, love your neighbor, maybe he actually literally meant the person living next door to you. And you can only love someone within 10 feet of them. That kind of thing. It's so important for us.
Well, you're always so insightful, Father. Thank you so much, and always so upbeat, and so proud of all that you do for our faith and what you do for the students at University of Minnesota Duluth and Focus, Fellowship of Catholic University Students. BulldogCatholic.org is Father's fantastic website. And maybe you've heard him on Hallow, of course, with his wonderful Catechism of the Year, the Bible in a Year. But check out his great ministry, BulldogCatholic.org. And, these are the kind of conversations we have at events like the Grand Hotel Getaway. And there's not that many spots left. We've got a $100 discount that is in place until February 15th. What a wonderful Valentine's Day gift you could give to your loved one, your spouse, and say, "Hun, we're going to Mackinac in the summertime." It's beautiful. Father, thank you so much. God bless you. I know you're probably off to somewhere, and you've got a huge pilgrimage you're doing that's sold out with corporate travel to Italy, to my motherland, Italy, and have a great time. And hopefully we can talk to you before then. Thank you for all you do.
Thanks, Teresa. Thank you for all you do as well. God bless.
Thank you. All right, BulldogCatholic.org. We'll be right back. And, of course, the Grand Hotel Getaway, which is coming up early August. Check it out, ctscentral.net, also on my website and Father's website as well, BulldogCatholic.org and TeresaTomio.com. Wrapping up a Tuesday morning when we come back. Stay tuned.
People ask how they can care for older family members who can't fully care for themselves. One answer is Visiting Angels, America's choice in senior home care. Visiting Angels assists adults nationwide with 600 locations to continue living at home and not have to move into a nursing home. Their caregivers provide assistance in hygiene, meals, and light housework. Services are provided up to 24 hours per day, and you can select your caregiver before service begins. More information, including franchise opportunities, is on the web at visitingangels.com.
The Heart of the Interior Life with Elizabeth Jangle.
How does God act when a person is moving away from Him? Father Timothy Gallagher writes how the good spirit awakens a sense of trouble in them and awakening them to their need for spiritual renewal and for God. The good spirit bites and stings their conscience, working to awaken the conscience of someone moving away from Him. Father Gallagher goes on to write, the good spirit works in their conscience through their rational power of moral judgment, awakening in them a true understanding of their unhappy condition with an accompanying sense of inner trouble. Questions may arise in the heart. Are you really at peace living this way? Why do you hurt those around you by ignoring their concerns for you? We say with certainty that we have a God of peace, but we see here that we have a God who does not want to lose one of his children and will keep us unsettled in our sin until we turn our hearts back to him.
For more information, visit AveMariaRadio.net.
I might have gone to church, at Christmas time, gradually quit going. It's not as scary as I thought it was. It's a much more warm and open place, and God really is about love. It's not about the rules and the things that I remember as a young child. It really is about the love that God has for each one of us that's so deep and wonderful.
If you've been away from the Catholic Church for any reason, visit CatholicsComeHome.org.
Appreciate your listenership here on EWTN. Thank you so much. EWTN.com. Coming up, we are going to be, actually tomorrow, because it'll be a Wednesday, means we are going to Rome to speak with our very own Joan Lewis in our Joan's Rome. And there's a lot going on in Italy, of course, of the Jubilee year. And stay close to, of course, all of our outlets, because we're giving you an update on what's happening in Rome, of course, on EWTN News Nightly, EWTN News In Depth, of course, the National Catholic Register and Catholic News Agency. All these different outlets, in addition to Joan's Rome at WordPress.com, are covering the developments in the Jubilee year, not only in Rome, but across the country. And writing an article, I think I just wrote this. Did I send it in? I can't even remember. I'm just writing so much every single day. It's like everything gets lost. But there's so much you can do. If you're interested in going to the Jubilee year in Rome, you should look on the Vatican website, because every month they have a different celebration of different ministries. Like in February, they're celebrating the diaconate. But don't forget to look in your own backyard, right? Because your diocese is probably doing something really, really cool as well. But we'll keep you up to date on all of our outlets, and also, of course, with Joan tomorrow. Have a great Tuesday. God is good all the time. All the time, God is good. Ciao, ciao.
You've been listening to Catholic Connection with Teresa Tomeo. Catholic Connection is a co-production of Ave Maria Radio and EWTN Radio, and carried across the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network. Our producer is Andrew Kruchek. For copies of this program or for more information, visit AveMariaRadio.net. That's AVEMariaRadio.net. Thanks for listening, and join us next time for another edition of Catholic Connection.